Well, aloha, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yenji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalesuji. And Ryan, today we head over to speak with someone we haven't spoken to for a while, Kauai Mayor Derek Kawakami.
That's right. We, of course, spoke to him a lot when we began this program during COVID-19 to get updates. And it's been a few months, but we are traveling now over to the Garden Isle to catch up with the mayor. Good morning, Mayor. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, everybody.
Just broadly, just want to start off entering your second term here in office. How have things been just in these first few months as you navigate through the start of this second term?
Well, everything is going as I had envisioned. We have our solid team from the first term. We have a new council chair to work with that has been very productive, and I'm just happy. I'm just very blessed that I get a second run at being mayor for this beautiful island and her people.
We've got a lot of things to cover with you since it has been a while. I want to ask you about some specific legislation. One is a bill right now making its way through the Senate that looks to penalize, or not penalize, but have hikers and people who are adventuring out on some of Hawaii's trails who are trespassing help to cover some of the cost of their own rescue. We know that there was just recently another rescue on the Kalalau Trail. They had to airlift that person out. I'm not sure whether or not that person had a permit or if they were, they're trespassing in any way, but sort of broadly, what's your take on whether people who are hiking and get themselves into these situations should have to cover some of the cost?
Well, I have strong feelings about this, and currently our County of Kauai Fire Department has the ability to collect some of the expenses incurred during these rescues if there are evidence of gross negligence, trespassing. The fire department, being the brave hearts that they are, will say that they would like to avoid charging people, even for gross negligence, because they don't want people to hesitate to call for help when they need help. But on the other hand, my position and many of our people is like, hey, things are expensive in Hawaii. If you are trespassing, if we have a gate closed that says the trail is closed and you still decide to not only put yourself in harm's way, but our first responders, you should get a bill. Our taxpayers and our people shouldn't be covering the cost. And, our firefighters, our first responders, they have to exercise discretion. And we have the full faith and confidence in our fire departments to use that discretion to issue out these bills when there's evidence of negligence, trespassing, or when people shouldn't be in certain areas but yet choose to. And so I totally support some of these things from some of these people from getting billed. Of course, hey, if you're hiking, I'm a surfer, hey, accidents happen. And in those cases, hey, yeah, we should get rescued. We should be able to depend on getting help without worrying about a bill. But we're talking about a select few that just disregard any warning signs and disregard other people's safety. They should get a bill.
And so because you already have experience, obviously, just mentioning what's happening in Kauai, is this something that you feel could be beneficial on a statewide level, that this becomes a statewide policy or legislation that would penalize such individuals?
I think so. But, one of our areas on Kauai is famous for drownings and near drownings. And, people still choose to go down there for what social media purposes, just curiosity, bad judgment. And so I think this would help to serve as a deterrent. What we really, really need is to educate our visitors and some of our local people too about, what time of year is dangerous on certain parts of the island and what they should and shouldn't do. And, so I think it's a collective approach to decreasing the amount of incidents that we have.
want to move on to another piece of legislation making its way through the session right now, and that is a sensitive places law regarding guns. We know that Honolulu County and Hawaii County have passed their own measures to try to restrict where guns can go now that residents in Hawaii can have a concealed carry permit and carry a firearm on their person, outside of their home. I'm interested to know, the Kauai has not followed these other counties in passing their own legislation. Do you think that this should be something that's regulated at the state level, or should there be no restrictions on where these guns can go?
No, it should definitely be regulated at the state level. Of course, they need to lean on the Attorney General to make sure that what they're deeming as sensitive places is constitutional. And then you don't want to further confuse firearm owners because, we have a slew of firearm laws that are pertinent to this new ruling by the Supreme Court that, creates a process for responsible citizens to conceal carry. So we're waiting to see what comes out of the state. We know and we've seen, city and county of Honolulu, Big Island, really define sensitive places. We feel that we want to avoid confusion because the amount of hunters that go back and forth between the different islands, the last thing we want to do is create a law that's not consistent. And, to be completely honest, for me, I'm more concerned that people are proficient with their firearm, that they are safe with it, that they have it secure, that they know good marksmanship, and that they know like when and where your life is threatened. There's a tremendous responsibility being a firearm owner, and even more so if you're going to have a permit to conceal carry. There's a responsibility to our community if you're one of those, and you have to have proficiency.
Another debate that's happening at the legislature is something that Governor Green had campaigned on, and one of his initiatives in his first year in office, and that is what's being tabbed as the green fee, or a destination fee for those entering the state to help to protect some of the more environmentally sensitive areas of our state. Now, there has been some pushback by lawmakers as well as some in the hospitality industry saying that it is too broad for it to be an overarching fee, and there's variations of the bill that now specifically focus on area-specific locations. I wanted to get your thought overall on the governor's proposal of this fee, and if you think that it is, one, necessary, and two, if it is something that's realistic to happen.
Well, I think the intent of the governor's proposal is sound and much needed. And of course, part of the process that's underway right now through the legislature is, our elected representatives and senators will refine what that green fee will look like. For here on Kauai, we don't have to look too far. We look at KE and how that's being managed. And of course, KE is unique that there's one way in, one way out. So you can put a checkpoint there that's operated by a nonprofit. We have a state reservation system where non-residents can reserve a time that they're going to visit KE. There's a certain amount of stalls for local residents and a certain amount of stalls for everybody else. If they're out of stalls, you jump on a shuttle that's operated by a nonprofit. And so it's an area of our island that is beautiful. Everybody wants to go down there, including locals like myself. And I can tell you, previous to it being managed the way that it's being managed, we would never go. We would never go because there was no order. It was chaos on the road. People just didn't know where to park. They're parking anywhere. And now it's like night and day. And I think that sort of model can be applied to many areas. The fee is charged to non-residents. And then people that live here on the island actually have an opportunity to go down and enjoy these special places ourselves. So I think that's a good model. And for the County of Kauai, we're following that model with 3 of our most popular beach parks. That would be Blackpot, Poipu, and Lidgate Beach as well.
I'm interested, sort of related, in your State of the County address, you talked about keeping visitors in visitor destination areas. On a practical level, how do you do that? How are you trying to do that in your county?
Well, from a county perspective, a big tool is through zoning. And what has happened over the years is we had all our hotel, resorts, timeshares located in visitor destination areas. And then we had a proliferation of vacation rentals, bed and breakfast that started to pop up in residential areas. And so for over a decade, Kauai County, under the planning department and former planning director, who's Michael DeHilig, really introduced a bill which became law to regulate non-conforming use or vacation rentals that are operating outside of those designated visitor areas. And so for over a decade, we've had a process to basically cap the amount of vacation rentals that were allowed in our residential areas. Did it make everybody happy? Absolutely not, because most people just wanted to see them go away. But legally, we felt that it was a risk to go that route because these folks were paying their TAT, they're paying their general excise tax. The state was collecting it, and so those operations were grandfathered in. What has evolved over the years is third-party platforms like Airbnb, Expedia, VRBO, and our county was one of the first to come to an agreement with Airbnb, the Expedias, VRBOs, that they were only going to market the units that had a non-conforming use. So we work collaboratively with the private sector to make sure that what's up on their websites are indeed allowed to operate. And that has created basically the foundation for keeping visitors where they're supposed to be. When it comes to our natural environment, it becomes a challenge. But I'm very, very happy to hear that DoCare hired a tremendous amount of DoCare officers, and many of them are from Kauai. And so they're going to be working their own backyard. They have local knowledge. And with the increase in DoCare officers, we should have more enforcement of keeping people out of sensitive places that they really don't belong in.
As a whole, how would you say tourism is looking right now on the island of Kauai since the pandemic, and since the island has been able to welcome more visitors back to the island? Would you say that you guys are seeing the normal amount of visitors? Are things still making a comeback? And how have you adjusted to the TAT being collected locally at your county and what you're seeing and able to use that money specifically for?
Well, I think the visitor industry is healthy, considering that when we were going through the pandemic, we didn't really know how quickly visitors would be willing to travel. But as the numbers show, we've hit numbers that have exceeded pre-pandemic levels. So sort of like that revenge travel, right? So we saw a big jump in numbers. And then like everything else, it goes up and down. Kauai is not as reliant on the Japanese market. And so we're sort of buffered from that. We also have a larger amount of timeshare units, and timeshare owners are more likely to come here for a week and 2 weeks at a time. And so they're going to make sure that they utilize their timeshare ownership. So that has really created sort of a stability when it comes to the visitor industry on Kauai. What I'm hearing mostly from the industry is the biggest thing is, one, we got to do a better job with affordable housing, and two, everybody's looking for workers, ourselves included.
How are you addressing that, and how can you, what are you doing? What steps are you taking to recruit folks? We hear this, whether it's the visitor industry, whether it's food and beverage, whether it's, Honolulu and the HPD trying, we've got over 300 vacancies for the HPD alone here in the city and county of Honolulu. I mean, what are you doing to try to bring those workers back?
Well, it depends. Being a public servant is a calling, right? And there's many pros and there's many benefits with being a county or a state worker. We're on a pension plan, right? If you put your years in, the private sector has, gone away from pensions and to 401ks. But if you're in it for the long haul, there's many long-term benefits. Of course, if you're looking for quick, immediate sources of revenue, the private sector is going to pay, better in many cases. So we are trying to just get the message about the benefits of being, part of the County of Kauai. And of course, many people from the private sector, coming off the heels of COVID-19, have, applied and gotten hired by the County of Kauai. We're really changing the culture of what county government looks like. We're a different type of administration. We bring a different type of energy, and we try to create a good, supportive, holistic work environment that can at least assist somebody in achieving the mecca of a work-life balance. And we really care about people. We're a small island. Everybody knows everybody, and it's a caring environment here. But back to Ryan's question too on the TAT, we're doing quite well. I mean, we took the general excise tax surcharge when it became available. Unbeknownst to us, the TAT was going to get scooped by the legislature and to fill their needs as well. And but they granted us a 3%. We're collecting more than what we were appropriated in the past, and so the TAT that we have imposed has served this purpose quite well. And then our approach to the TAT is we're making tremendous amount of investment in infrastructure in and around our visitor destination areas, because the intent of the TAT, part of the intent was to reinvest into the visitor industry. And so we wanted to make sure that we let our hotel resort operators know that, hey, we're collecting 3% from you, but here's where we're reinvesting in our parks, in our traffic mobility plans in and around the resort areas, in creating sidewalks so both residents and visitors can walk or bike safely. And so we're really taking an approach to holistically spend that TAT to help our residents, but also to let the tax payers know that, hey, we are indeed reinvesting some of it into the visitor industry itself.
Yeah, and staying on this topic of infrastructure, one of the areas of concern whenever it rains, of course, is the north shore of your island. There always seems to be some sort of bad luck with a landfall, a road that gets washed away. As you look forward into potential disasters that could happen or storms that may come, how are you looking for access points to better service that community in these types of events? Because it seems like anytime there is a storm, this is an area that always gets hit.
Yeah, we've been through it a few times out there, and the most refreshing thing that I think any mayor could ask for is having a resilient community in these challenging areas. I can tell you, the people north of the Honolulu Bridge and just across the island are tough. And one thing that was really displayed all the way back to Hurricane Iniki, but then more recently during 2018 when we had that landslide and floods, is that we have a community that if they're supported, they're going to lead. So, you often hear community-led, government-supported, which basically means that community already has teams in place that has identified, various options to be able to get supplies in and out of areas that are isolated from the rest of the island. We got to make sure that we're ready to support these communities. Of course, we're planning a resiliency center north of the Honolulu Bridge so that we can pre-stage emergency response vehicles. And even before a weather event hits, our fire department, AMR, police, they're already pre-staging equipment in these sensitive areas just in case things go south. But I'd have to say the number one factor is our community. They know how to come together when need be, and they know how to lead, and they know how to get through tough times.
I want to ask you about another issue that you brought up in your State of the State, and that is the property tax bills that your residents are facing there in the county. You've proposed a 10% reduction in property tax. I'm sure a lot of people welcome that kind of a proposal. How can the county afford that? And is that a one-time reduction, or is that something that you propose, in perpetuity?
Yeah, when we propose that reduction, I mean, it is intended to be, in perpetuity. And the reason why we looked at 10% as something that would be sustainable is because we have other means of financing, meaning we have other sources of revenue. The general excise tax, now that we're able to collect our own TAT without having to worry about a cap or having it getting swept up, it gives our ability to budget and our ability to fund projects much more predictability. And 63% of our revenue is coming from non-residents. So either from people who live here part-time, have a second home, or from our visitors. 63% of our means of funding, county operations are coming from non-residents. And with the 10% reduction, that number holds true, and it provides some stability for the skyrocketing valuations in property. And it's something that we feel we can sustain into the future as well. And, our families need it more than ever.
One of the things that we saw during the pandemic was the collaboration that happened between the mayors and with the administration, and just the constant conversation that was going on there. Now that there are some new players involved, of course, Maui has a new mayor and there is a new governor. How have things been relationally with the other mayors and with the Green administration? How often are you all meeting, or are you speaking to the governor? If you can explain a little bit how this transition has been with new leaders stepping in.
Oh, it's been seamless. I mean, it's an honor and a pleasure to work with the mayors that I get to serve with. Mayor Bisson, Mayor Roth, Mayor Blangiardi. We come together regularly, at least monthly. And we always reach out when one of us is hit with a fire, a drought, weather. I mean, we're always offering resources and assistance to the other counties. And then, of course, with Governor Green, Lieutenant Governor Luke coming in, their communication lines has been tremendously transparent and open. They're very open to collaborating. They're always interested in what we're dealing with on our particular county. And it's been about a collaborative experience as one could hope for. And so things have been going fairly well.
This is a question that I've asked you in the past, and now I get to blame it on a viewer. Heidi wants to know, will Mayor Kawakami consider running for governor? It's something that you're asked, I'm sure, on a regular basis. We know the administration is just sort of getting started here, but is it something that you are looking to in the future?
I'm looking at just being a good mayor and counting my days, because like I said, I never imagined I was going to have this opportunity to be mayor. And when I became mayor, I didn't even know if I was going to enjoy the gig or not. I love it. It gives me a sense of purpose. I found out that I love the big challenges. And, I'm focused on just counting my blessings, enjoying this, and like anything else that I've always had to do. Like, I talk to my family about it. So right now, I'm looking at, like, today, I'm living in the present, and I'm just, look, I got a good gig. I wish I could do this forever. How's that? I wish we didn't have term limits. I wish I could run again and again and again until people said, let's get rid of this bum and kick me to the curb. That's what I really hope and dream for, is that I could just do this for as long as the people wanted me to do it.
Well, one of the topic we want to just get to really quickly before we run out of time, and you had mentioned earlier, is affordable housing. And that seems to be just an issue that all counties are dealing with. They're dealing with on the state level, on a practical sense, in the time that we have. I mean, what specifically are you looking to do on Kauai to help with this issue?
Well, we moved away from policy and legislation, right? That doesn't actually build homes. And we just took a page out of the developers' playbook. We started acquiring large parcels of land, buying land back, taking it back for our people. We've been able to put in the infrastructure, which is what we do best here on the County of Kauai. And then, of course, we go out to bid for developers to come in and build the affordable housing units. We got Lima Ola coming up. We acquired 400 acres in Waimea. We were able to build Haupu View, which was basically just a vacant parking lot right here in Lihue. Right across the Haupu View, we got Keolaula at Pualoke, which is our permanent supportive housing. That is all on county or state land. That was executive order to the county. And that's a way that we can get units up quicker without having to wait for the private sector market to be ready to develop them. And in that model, we can keep these affordable housing units affordable in perpetuity. We really are big fans of controlling our own destiny and creating these public-private partnerships. I think that's the route to go.
You know, you mentioned how much you enjoy this job, and we talked about a number of areas that you're working to affect change in the county. I'm just interested, you know, what most do you love about what you're doing, and what keeps you up at night?
I sleep good at night. But what I look forward to is it's just the people, right? Like, I mean, I grew up in a grocery store. If you're in a grocery store, you're customer service oriented. And I love the fact that a guy like me can jump in with our roads crew, put my steel toe boots on, and help them go patch potholes and learn and appreciate about the work that they do. Learn, you know, the questions that many of our community members may have. Towards the end of the month, people are likely to see me behind the counter at the DMV just doing the basic registration renewals, because at the end of the month they're pumping, and then, I mean, at least I get to contribute. And then, I mean, I just love the people. I love the aspect of every day is going to be unpredictable. Like, something in my organized calendar is going to go awry, and then I gotta adjust. I love the big challenges. Of course, we hope everybody is safe, but our team thrives in the big challenge, and there is no shortage of big challenges in this line of work. I think that's what makes me happy, is having a sense of purpose. And at the end of the day, there is a level of fulfillment that we did our best to make things better.
You know, we just have a few more minutes left, but wanted to give you just a final opportunity to speak to your residents on Kauai, or your final message here this morning for those tuning in about all that's happening in your county.
I just want to say I love you folks. And, you know, thanks for giving me an opportunity and our team an opportunity to serve. And to halau kale mokihana o lena ala as you make your way to the big island and represent Kauai and Niihau to the best. We wish you the best of luck. I'll see you folks tomorrow. And to the people of the Big Island, thank you so much for hosting the Merry Monarch. What a tradition. It's something special. If you haven't been there in person, put it on your bucket list. You have to experience it at least a few times. But we're so proud of our people. I'm so proud of our people here on Kauai and Niihau. And, to the rest of the state, we love you as well. We're all one.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. Kauai Mayor Derek Kawakami. He might be the happiest mayor in America, Ryan. I just someone who loves his job. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Always great to hear from him. He is always so positive in his outlook and really just embracing all aspects of that job. We talked about right at the top this Senate Bill 786, which would require folks who are being rescued, who have trespassed or broken laws to get on those hikes and then needed aid to pay for some of those rescues. That is a controversial bill. HFD and HPD have said that they don't support it for the same reasons that the mayor said that he understands his firefighters likely don't either, and that is they're worried that there could be some reluctance from those people in need to call 911. But at the end of the day, he says it's something that he thinks is a good thing because there needs to be some accountability for people who break the rules and then put others in danger when they need help.
Yeah, and we also heard from him, of course, just speaking broadly of the when we talked about gun control and just what the Kauai model would look like with the sensitive places and sensitive areas discussion that's happening. The mayor saying that this is something that he believes should be handled on a statewide level and something that shouldn't be parceled between the islands, with different counties having different policies for each of their islands on how they want to handle guns in their communities. And so we'll see as legislation continues to move through how that will be handled through this legislative session. Also got his thoughts on the green fee. Again, another person that we're hearing that is more in favor of something that is more specific to locations in terms of fees rather than an overarching fee, a theme that we're seeing and hearing from many leaders in the community, and something that looks like might be the model moving forward as this bill and this legislation continues to evolve through this legislative process.
That's right. He highlighted some of the areas on his island that have some destination management there with collecting fees at a specific site, limiting parking, and how that, he said, has actually really uplifted those areas and made them more accessible to residents. And so that's something that he really supports. We talked about destination management more broadly and looking at keeping visitors in visitor areas. That's something that he's working on from a policy perspective. And also interesting, Ryan, to get his take on affordable housing. He's saying that, policy doesn't do it. You got to go out there, buy the land, and build the homes yourself.
Yeah, taking a little different approach of how they want to tackle things on Kauai. And of course, they have a different layout, of course, with just access to land. And so the mayor taking that approach and very positively, you can hear from his reaction to that question and his response that he believes that they are doing the best for that community and how they are tackling this issue. And seeing the results immediately with some of the housing developments and the affordable housing that they are building there on the island of Kauai. We also, of course, it seems to always come up is his political future. We didn't pose a question this time. It came from one of the audience members asking about his future political plans and if he has any aspirations to one day lead the state. But he's saying he's very happy in his current role and would like to be mayor forever if he could on the island of Kauai.
He does seem quite content. One of the reasons that folks might be supporting him in staying in that office is also that 10% reduction in property tax that he talked about. The idea of getting a permanent reduction in your property tax bill is something that is no doubt popular there. And he says is really possible because the state has taken more ownership. We saw that happen in the last few years with the TAT now being collected at the county level, but they have more autonomy as to where that money goes. It's giving them a little flexibility in how they manage their money. And so they're able then to give their residents a tax break, which is always welcome news. So interesting always to hear from him. He really is just so positive, and you can tell really content and happy in that job. On Friday, we are going to be shifting gears and speaking to the new head of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, that is Kali Watson.
Yeah, there was some concern, of course, about this department and the leadership moving forward. We're going to get an update from the new director in this nomination and this process of having to go through this, and as well as the issues that face that department and how they plan to spend that money for, of course, Native Hawaiians and that community as well. So a lot to catch up on with the new director. We hope you join us right back here on Friday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Aloha.
Aloha.